Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben.
I'm Swizz.
And thank you for joining us. It is the troublesome time of the bye period. It was 4 out, then 2 teams out, and now it's up into the 6 and the 6. Most notably, next week's going to be absolutely anarchy. Welcome. Chris can't make it, but it is Swizz and myself. Easy apologies. I do apologize for not getting on much the last couple of weeks. Shit has been real. But before we move on, SC Insider 100, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, or the audio platforms as well. Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, you name it, and on the YouTube. Search for us, Supercoach Insider. Like, subscribe, get amongst the business. Swizz, how you doing, my man?
Mate, it's been a pretty full-on couple of weeks, but we're here again and pumped to talk Supercoach. So,
Mate, thank God I'm here. You guys break down when I'm not around. Trying to technical difficulties and
Chris was doing with that. It was
editing footage at midnight. They're lost, guys. They're lost without me. It's a streamlined, simple process. Maybe it's my fault.
I don't have to do all that. I just come here and show my pretty face and talk crap, and that's Chris's role when you're not here.
Yeah, maybe I should upskill him for those other times. But yeah, look, I do apologize. It's been very, very busy, full on draining sort of where I am. So it's, I haven't even done my team pod. So I'm going to have to catch people up on a couple of weeks. But yeah, so that's pretty much where we're at with me. It's been a full on tiresome period, but we won't talk about me because I'll tell people on my team pod. I am having a little shout out today. I've gone the Irish because you were telling me, was it Uzun? Bloody the Irishman from Geelong is injured and he's not playing.
He was going to get dropped anyway. They've got that many ins, but yeah, he's injured as well. So just cross him out. So many people, but not so many, but quite a few brought him early, thinking, yeah, he's somebody who might get me through the buys. Bad mistake, that one.
Another donut.
Even it's not just him too. I feel like even as well he's been playing, Nevitt's getting out this week. They are
Nevitt.
They are making wholesale changes at Geelong.
No, never to mind. Never to mind.
It is happening. I think
5 changes. I think was it Duncan, Danger.
They're playing
Guthrie. He's gone for ages.
They're playing Port, so
they need to win.
This is a huge match for them. If the Cats were, I feel like if the Cats were 9-3, 4-3 or something like that, they probably don't rush them back. They go, okay, we cop the loss, or we give us our best shot with the team we've got out there. But they're 6 and 6, knowing this is their chance to try to catch up on the 8, because obviously they've got a game in hand with the your Essendon Adelaide Bulldogs. So they've got really no choice. And this is what we were saying about the Cats, unlike previous situations, especially last year, where they had the flexibility of resting players and list management. They have no choice at the moment, because if they drop this game, they are seriously looking down the barrel. Especially they play the D's the following week. This is a massive fortnight for the Cats.
They've got to get it together. Speaking of getting it together, we're looking possibly, first of all, so the structure is we're going to look at some possible downgrade targets, the pros and I guess for and against for those options. Then we're also going to go a little bit of strategy. How are you navigating through the bye periods, especially how to go through this week into next week, and some different strategies you might be looking at, and the benefits, or we'll play the both sides. So Swizz will be telling you all the good stuff, and I'll be the devil's advocate saying, do not bring this person into your Supercoach side. It's pretty much how we do it, isn't it?
That's usually how it works, and that, mate.
And then I give you crap when I'm right.
I go at 60%, so we're all right.
60%. Ooh. I don't even know what I go at, but look, we'll go through that. And then the last part is tossing up some of the premiums. There's not too many. I think 6 teams that have already played. So a bit of a toss up between hey, if you had to choose one person to come in this week, which one would we prefer and why? Because I think that's pretty much covers every single scenario at the moment. You're either looking to get some cash and free up some to make some upgrades. Who would you upgrade to? Or you're you start to look at your side going, hang on, I've only got 14 or 15 players next week. What am I going to do? Which is where some people started to get a little bit trigger happy and started trading out your Zeebles and your Sheezels last week. But I digress. We'll move into it, Swizz. So first off, Kieran Briggs, can we I don't want to talk about him because I wanted to bring him in my side, and my logic got the better of me, because I'm sitting there going, I don't need him for this round because I've already got plenty of people on my team. And then the one after, I was like, okay, well, I won't play him in the ruck anyway. and then I need him for 1 round. So I was like, is it worth me burning 2 trades to bring this guy in for 1 round and maybe make me some cash? And next one, he's just dominated, like 150K generation in 2 weeks, soon to be 200,000 or more in 3 weeks. And now people are starting to get all crazy talking about trading out bloody English.
Yes,
trading English. Like, what a luxury.
And there's good reason to that. It's because
you're mad.
Briggs is clearly the number one at the Giants. Even Footy Classified we're talking about, I don't think he's contracted next year. And clubs are talking about going after Darcy, saying, well, why can't you go after this guy at a discount price? We know the Giants, like Flint's not a great ruck. Bruce is always injured. So he's a clear number one man there. And he looks great. Like, he gets around the field really well. It's like a junior version of Sean Darcy, going around there just racking up possessions and using his big frame, getting forward, kicking goals, doing it all at the moment. And he doesn't have some, like, outside of Melbourne straight after the bye, he's got some good matchups in the ruck as well. So, like, even like this is a tough matchup this week normally against Fremantle, but there's no Darcy. Like, he's just the old KOTD with his ruck matchups at the moment. So,
are you sure there's no Darcy? Because they did say he might have the bye and miss one. Has he been ruled out?
No, he's not playing this week.
Man, I must have been missing a lot of footy chat, to be honest, the last few days.
He won't play.
Did you notice, Swizz, little sidebar? I'm wearing the D's. Well, I wasn't going to rock up here with Brisbane losing to Hawks and Richmond bloody winning in an upset over in the West. I was like, right, I'm gonna wear the team that wins.
Yeah, good.
And I thought I'll just support the D's for a moment before I go. I'm going to the Gabba. Shout out as well if you're going to the Gabba on Friday night. I'll be there watching the Sydney Swannies up at the Gabba, so that'll be really cool for those that are around as well.
Richmond St Kilda game, but
are you coming up for the Richmond game? I know sometimes you do.
We'll see. Well, things have changed over the last week for me, and that. So, just went out and bought a house. So,
right, yes, no, fair call. I was going to say they've changed, as in Richmond won a couple.
My financial arrangement has changed a little bit over that, so we will see. And not just that, but it's everything that comes with it. It's been a hectic last couple of weeks with a whole lot of other stuff going on. But
no, congratulations! I did forget. Well done.
For that, mate. That's all good. So I was at a wedding. Congratulations to Rhiannon and Brad on getting married finally. So I was trying to keep up with the footy as much as possible, and I was like a little bit of the Brisbane Hawthorn game, and so disappointing because I obviously had Lachie Neale vice captain, and that didn't pan out the way it should have. But just couldn't believe how good the Hawks played of the very limited of the game time I saw of that. So it wasn't actually a great week for me of watching footy. I got to watch a lot of the North Melbourne Giants game because I was in a pub before going to see Baby Metal, and then we saw a little bit of Essendon Carlton in the mosh pit when we were in between bands. So it was I think I saw barely any of Sunday, not a lot of Saturday outside of listening to the Richmond Freo game while at the wedding when I could. And then the Monday game, I was actually out on Puff and Billy, so I saw a little bit of Collingwood Melbourne.
At a wedding.
I was like, I was like, how can? And I listened to the last quarter too. I was like,
you can't do that.
Well, there's no like dancing,
Chris went to, and I think it was an engagement party, and it was Collingwood playing West Coast in the first finals round, like top 4 over in the West, and he nearly got not invited back. He's like, well, I'm like this. Why would you invite me and put on the football? And he's just shouting at this engagement party at the TV with relatives everywhere. Hilarious. Shout out to Damien Gunn as well. It was his engagement party, I believe. So yeah, Chris definitely tested the friendship limit. So
Briggs. So on about Briggs, yeah. So I thought it was just the natural any cash cow.
Is it too late?
They make 150K and then you trade them out. And I thought he was the obvious one because he had the number one ruck roll. Now it's gone a lot better than what I thought, but I did say this guy's making 150K. Well, he's going to make 200K in
3 weaks.
In 3 weeks.
Stupid. Is it too late to get him in now though?
Yes, it is.
Because I've heard some people talking about getting him.
-6 and they're saying 50. But the problem is he's got the bye the following week and it's such a bad bye for everybody. So how are you managing that? If for whatever reason you just had loaded up on Geelong and Suns players and players in this round that are out, maybe you can somehow manage it, but you're not trading out well, it depends, I guess, on what sort of ruck situation. Maybe if you're still, I don't know, holding Darcy, or you had not one of the main rucks, like you're not trading out Marshall because he's playing the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The English one's the real conversation going into next week.
No, it's a rich man syndrome. So if you have Max Gawn, punt him. Like that's probably the easiest situation you have. Now, if I had Briggs and I had Gawn, because I've got Gawn, I'd be punting Gawn easily into next week because at like 500K or whatever, you can try and get up to another premium. No stresses. Now, it's rich man syndrome because people with English are going, oh, I've got the best ruck in Supercoach. Why don't I just fuck him off? And literally, oh, this guy will do really well. Now, the only scenario that works was years ago when Gawn just came onto the scene and just kept on, like keeping on with his average. So if he does that, then yeah, sure, great. If he goes into a lull patch, then all of a sudden you're losing points every week.
Yeah.
But the one benefit that you are speaking of, if English is your only way to get Clayton Oliver, then you'd be essentially playing Clayton Oliver against English, and then you'd be playing Briggs against another lesser tier mid. So that I can understand it actually stacking up and racking off. But for me, if you got Gawn, it's the easiest scenario. Whereas English, he's the best ruck.
Well,
like don't mess with the best ruck.
And I don't know if Briggs can keep up like a 113, but we always say it's a sole ruck. And the way these guy plays, like the way he gets the stats and that, he can potentially average 100 on the run home.
Hey, ask any man, any real man. You can't stay Briggs forever. He's got to come down eventually.
Well, you expect it, but it's not like it's his first season of footy. Like he's been in the system for 5 years now. So it's not like, it's some 19-year-old that just walked off the street. We're talking about a guy who's like 24, 23, 24, who can at least, he's got the body to handle himself and should be able to play out most of those games.
So you're saying he can keep it up?
I don't think he can keep up a 113.
You just missed the whole point.
I did. I did get the pun, but I was just like, bugger it. I think this is a discussion nonetheless that people are already having, that just park it till next week because English has got a break even of 99 anyway, which he should smash. Now, the conversation gets brought up next week if English has a sub 100 and Briggs goes 120.
Anyway, Briggs is only 16% owned, so stuff you and part of your 16%. Moving on is Lewis Milliken's another one that has been brought up quite a lot. He was at 70 average, 52 in the week just gone, break even of negative 39, projected to go up by 43K this week. Where do you stand on Milliken? Like, is there enough room to keep him in the mix and bring him into that side? They already have had their bye, so there's another person we might be able to have this week. Cross your fingers and hope he plays again next week.
Yes, is the short answer. I actually was looking at thinking, does Francis nearly get left out after the week before? But he played actually quite well this week. So we know Paddy McCartan, we've talked about this, is not coming back this season. So that does keep that one spot open. But it's now with the rest of the Swans. So who did we have back last week? It was Rampy that came back into the side. So that did give us a little bit more of insurance because, so we can play with that sort of setup. They had Fox back there, Rampy. So how much more is going to actually change? Like Blakely is probably now the issue because what's he at toe injury? So, and he was cleared of concussion as well. If he was to miss that, at least that shored up Milliken for at least a week. But this is my worry. I feel like Milliken's just the next one out. Mills 1 to 2. Does Mills coming back in push somebody back or push somebody forward? And Tommy McCartan's like they're sitting there going, he's improving and showing good signs, but then it's a bit like that Tuke Miller situation. Like it's unclear of when he's going to return. Like McCartan could still miss the rest of the season. McCartan could come back in 2 or 3 weeks. They're not sure on this at all, the Swans.
I just sent a message to Zane as well. Shout out to Zane, big Swan supporter. I just said
so he might have a bit.
I've just asked.
This is the other issue with him because the McCartans with their concussion and obviously Paddy's history. Do they not risk Tom? How does Tom not push himself back too early? And I think it all kind of sets up on these couple of injuries that they've got and how quickly they get back. we know he's going to, like, as a defender playing in that role, he's probably going to score 50 to 60. So that the scoring's not the real issue. It's just I wouldn't want. I would want some assurity that he's playing next week, because there'd be nothing worse than bringing a guy in for round 14 that gets dropped round 15.
Yeah, but again, with a rookie, you can't really predict
And
too
you
far
can't
ahead,
at
which is
all.
the issue. I've messaged Zane saying, "Hey, thoughts on Milliken?" I said, "I'm going to ride or die based on your word for Supercoach." So if he says he's in, I'm bringing him into my side, and that's how much faith I'm going to put in Zane. Because again, it is a gamble. But if Zane tells me he's going, I'm putting him in my side. So I'll give you that one, especially if Uzin's not playing. Then that's going to be an issue. I just don't like his price because that's 60, 70K I could have used elsewhere.
I'm finding now, depending on some situation with the rookies, like, people have brought Ford and Wardlaw and Briggs and that. Cash isn't becoming such an issue for some teams. It is for others,
The buys
and
is
and
the buys now the issue with all
yeah,
of them
it's
sharing the
more
same buy.
because people with some of these injuries and then other rookies not playing. It's making sure you actually have enough players, which is the problem. So I would rather, if you're going to take a risk on someone, I'd rather spend up an extra 70, 80, 100K on somebody that is playing this week and next week.
Yep. And if you're tossing straws to go sideways rookie trade, so one rookie to another rookie just because they're playing, then you might as well just trade a premium to another premium that is also going to play, because yes, that other rookie might give you cover per se, but otherwise you're just trading a rookie to another rookie just to get a warm body on field.
Yeah.
Which is burning one trade for, yes, that rookie might make you some cash, but if there's not much equity in it, that trade for you, you might as well just go premium to premium. And realistically, if they have 10 more rounds for it, Zane's messaging, Zane live. You might as well just get that, bank that rookie, like bank the premium score and literally just ride that train to the end of the season. So that's where we're at with that one. Next one is a really contentious one as well. Taron Thomas. Now, if only he started one game later, he could have been a nice little pickup just after their bye for those that were a little bit stretched. And it's kind of almost same as the Harry Himmelberg, because, again, they play next week. At least with Harry Himmelberg, he'll probably go up 30K. He'll probably end up being about 405, 410K, which I can deal. But there's no point really bringing him in this week unless you're playing for leagues only. If you're playing for leagues only, hell yeah. Like, bring in Taron Thomas, bring in Harry Himmelberg, bring in every player with around 15 bye, knowing you're just going to tank that 1 week. But it's hard at this point in time because you're bringing someone in that's just going to miss next week anyway. Now, and the reason we speak about it is that you could bring in any other player. So especially Harry Himmelberg, you could bring in any other player and they will play that extra one round for you. If they play one round for you and they average 100 this week, so they get you 100 score this week, that's basically 10 rounds to go. That's them scoring 10 points more per game for the rest of the season, just because you've got a guy getting you another donut. That's the benefit. That's why you go for one of the premiums that's already played, which we'll get into shortly. And that's why Taron Thomas, it's a big risk. If you have a lot of rookies for next week, if you've already got lots of premiums for next week, like most of us, Taron Thomas is hard, yet a lot of people are bringing him in.
See, I wouldn't go near it. For the buy situation, and that's why I end up talking myself out of keys last week, as well as he did it against West Coast. It's a guy that is going to miss, and he would have mucked up my entire structure this week by bringing him in. Thomas, as you said with Himmelberg, it's a buy next week, so you've got that issue in itself. The other problem is, like, his stats, like, they're not great. 17 touches, 19 touches. A lot of connection with the forward line, kick the three as well this week. North Melbourne, as well as they've been playing, they played really well against the Bombers, played very well against the Giants, but the Giants are a bottom six team. They then go into this week the Bulldogs, which they normally don't match up well against, and we know the Bulldogs, just the way they play, chew up a lot of points. Then Adelaide away, Geelong down in Geelong. There's a couple of tough matchups. I think North Melbourne again could be competitive this week against North, but I think there's going to be a drop off very soon.
North could be competitive against North.
Sorry, North can be competitive against the Bulldogs. My apologies.
Same colour, half right, half right.
Same, both played at Etihad. But the Adelaide and Geelong games, I feel like North, there's a game coming up very soon where they're not going to get near it. Like that, there's only so long that you can be really competitive without and young players, and they're going to run into a brick wall, and that could come straight after the bye or the week after. Like, Geelong or Adelaide, one of those, especially the way the Crows score, or Geelong down in Geelong. And then I think that's where we're going to see the bubble burst. I feel like he could suck a few people in this week. He might even score well this week. He gets the bye, and then you're going to hit a couple of games where the North are going to score like 50 points.
I think North is going one way or the other. They could pinch a win, or they could get flogged.
I think they've got games which they can pinch wins. They've got a run there against Hawthorn, St Kilda, West Coast. Yeah, there's definitely games that I think they could win after that, but I don't see them going to Adelaide and pinching that. I don't see them going into Geelong and pinching that. Those teams have just got way too much firepower, and that's the problem. It's like North have shown an ability to score, but Adelaide's one of the best attacking teams in the comp. Geelong with Jezza and Hawkins, they just manhandle North every time they play them. So, yeah, I don't endorse the pick at all.
I'll tell you where he did look good, though. Taron Thomas actually looked composed compared to a lot of the other North players and actually hit up lead-up targets. So he actually looked good.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that, but
I know. For that price,
but I watched him against the Bombers and it was good, but the Bombers they were slightly undermanned that day, but it was a very attacking game of footy. There was not much defence in that game. That's why it was high scoring, and it nearly was that mentality. I'm not going to sit there and say the Bombers got too ahead of themselves, but there was definitely a little bit of a mentality that, we can play a bit more attacking footy that day. And then the Giants, as we said, they're a bottom six team, so they don't probably have, though they played a little bit more defensive. It's easier to play against them than it would be playing against some of these top teams. So I think North are going to hit that wall very soon, and Thomas playing up in the forward half, it's going to affect him.
Interesting.
What Zane said.
Zane, he just said, like him as a player, he has come a long way since a few years back. His job security is so iffy though, but apparently word is Swans fan day, Tom McDonald's coming back this week. Personally, would still have him over Francis. There's only one thing in his favour, hearing Blakey won't get up. So it won't be a huge scorer, but if at that price, he could go up in, a price riser if that's what I'm after. I said, I just need him as a warm body for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And he said, back him in, and he sent me a Thelma and Louise holding hands off a cliff moment. So shout out to Zane, mate. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I think Francis stays in before Melican because they've obviously targeted him to come up there. That
doesn't mean anything, mate. He's a ginger.
But I always think that. But if you've got a player from another club, they're usually going to have that opportunity. And Francis, I thought last week would have been the week if they dropped him. Clearly, they didn't. Backed him in. He played all right on the weekend. So he'd have to play horrible this week for him to be dropped over Melican.
Geez, does that mean I have to put Melican in my side now? He's put a little Thelma and Louise hold-handing moment on there.
I appreciate him. Yeah, plays this week. It's the next week's your problem.
Next week's my problem.
That's right. That's why I wouldn't touch him.
No, and he's meant to go up 43K if he goes 58.
Up that. And people go, and he'll probably have a good game, and then he gets dropped, or and then people will be like, oh God, he's another one.
I will cry if I bring him in and he's dropped next week. I need a player next week. I really do.
You know what's going to really hurt? Because a lot of people are skeleton next week anyway, even after trades.
Imagine an injury.
Yeah,
or
injury or suspension and that. So
if you
imagine if we cop a Sicily situation to one of the players next week.
No, imagine Humphreys gets dropped, all these other players you're holding out just to hope that they play. They all just get dropped or managed. Just Stewie Jew managing rookies.
We'll just manage our players.
Just managing rookies. I would literally just flip a couch. Swear to God. Okay, so the next one is someone that we did speak about as well. No, we go from the young ones to the oldies. Natty Fife, Mr. Natty himself, natural specimen, 275K. He did go up 31, but he's definitely still at a reasonable price. And I know a few people that were looking to wait a week, see what he produced, because his break-even was still decent enough that he wouldn't go up too much in price. And I think he was actually quite impressive. Time on ground, the role looked pretty good. I think he looks pretty good generally. That first quarter's a little slow, but he got a 96, so that's definitely going to spike a little bit of cash gen. And he's going to play, which was the part I liked about him, because it was 244K or whatever he was. And I brought him in, I think it was 12,000 more than Young from Richmond. And I was like, at least, Young, I need someone in his buy round anyway, round 15. So I was like, Fife, hopefully he can make me some cash. Hopefully he can score some points. He can cover me through the buys. Worst case scenario, it's 5.
Mm-hmm.
I owned a Brownlow medalist for a short while, which is how some people feel about Cripps. Oh, what a fall from grace.
Yep. I've been saying
Absolutely
it all year,
fallen.
Cripps needs to be traded. But
275. I'd go Fife over Taron Thomas.
I considered Fife last week, but my worry was I don't think there was enough data around the role.
Chris got in your head. Chris got in your head.
I don't think there was enough data around the role. And the issue also is Amira was out. So Fife played significantly more CBAs than he's going to this week.
Johnson played more CBAs.
No, Fife as well, mate.
No, Fife's killing. Fife's life. They need to win. They need to win.
They do need to win. But I don't think it necessarily has to be just Fife to get them the win.
Here's the thing. People acting like he was a $400,000 player. Like it was Himmelberg.
Yeah.
Trying to pay for Himmelberg's price to bring in Fife. He was $240.
Yeah.
I paid $30,000 less for Humphrey. So I'm like, I can take a risk for $240K on a guy that's going to cover me for the buys.
It's no problems at all. I've got no issue with the pick, and he played well. But yeah,
you hear that, Chris?
He was the third most CBAs on the weekend, and I think Amira comes in and then pushes. Like the thing is, Fife can play forward more than what Johnson can play forward. So I think he's still going to be serviceable. Like Fife can definitely go and play half forward, half mid, and go and get 70. No problem.
Johnson plays everywhere. He's a little slut.
Yeah. But I think they go back to that and Brayshaw, Sarong, and Amira with Johnson as the fourth, and then Fife becomes the fifth, and he rotates between both.
Right.
Yeah.
So, is there any other cheapies on the horizon? Because I can't see much this week outside of people jumping early and I'm just trying to think. Is it probably he'll only play second game next week? So the was it Marek? Is probably the only other one people might be jumping on.
He's got the bye this week anyway.
He's got the bye this week, but if you needed to free up cash, I highly think they're playing him next week.
Oh,
he kicked 2 goals, so
100%.
Kicked 2 goals. So that's someone. If you go, okay, hey, I've burnt through my boosts. I need to really free up my 3 trades next week. I would not mind actually trading in a Marek this week. If you're already set for trades this week and you don't really need it, then you could just get rid of a rookie who's not going to play next week or already not playing this week, and then you're just literally freeing up cash to launch an assault next week. You're freeing up cash and putting in a player that should play next week unless he gets injured at training or something. And that's a pretty good strategy to have because at least that way you have 3 trades next week. If you don't have a boost, you can make your 1 down, 1 up, or 2 down, 2 up. No, sorry, 1 down, 1 up, and then maybe sideways. Yep. Or you might even be able to go 1 down, 2 up with the cash you bank this week. So that is a good strategy as well. If you think you might need the trade next week, I don't mind that either. There's not much else there on the horizon.
Not in that sort of price. I think it's the awkward price, maybe in the 400s, which people might have a little bit of cash to move, a couple of rookies. Like if you're looking at, say, Weddle, for example, moving him to a round 12, round 13 player. And I think a lot of people are looking for that sort of value. So that's where obviously we're trying to look at the rookies, and only really Fife. Like this is the only one I could endorse of those other players that we've pushed up. But I think there's a lot of people have been messaging me going, okay, who's between 4 and 500? Is there anyone there that I can potentially look at because I'm strapped for cash? And we know that even though trades are getting low, there's some people in that position, as we said, that are looking at their bench and going, I can't cash any of these guys out there. They're fine, or they're feeling good about their cash. And there's others going, I've got absolutely no. And that's why, Ben obviously jumped on Keys and you've jumped on Fife, and people looking at Himmelberg. So
I was thinking about Keys. I actually thought about Keys, Fife, and Yo, and I'm like, how dirty would that be? I was like, surely one of them goes well.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoever wins the comp's probably going to bring in all 3 and just risk it for the biscuit.
100%.
And all 3 went well.
Someone outside the top 1,000 like Abdul, just probably bring all 3 of them in and then watch them go ham. I'll give you a couple of names, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on some of these players.
Go, hit me.
So first is NWM, Wanganeen Malira.
Oh, he's someone I looked at in draft, I think a week ago after their bye. So when they had their bye, I was like, I'll be able to pick him up. And then I forgot about him because he had a run of a couple of hundreds, I think. But his 3-round average and his 5-round average.
97, then had that 57 against the Crows. But then he's gone 113, 100, and 119.
So the 113-100, because of that one before it, his 3-round average was still low enough that people weren't on him in draft.
Yep.
So that's where I actually looked at him. I was like, oh, I don't need him this week because I have the bye, but I'll sneak in. And then I forgot.
Yep.
You
And
know,
then
obviously forgetting.
And in Classic, then he goes up 40K.
Oh, he has done a remarkable reversal. I think the more time he's had in that role, he's actually looked stronger as the season has progressed, which makes sense. Some people got him in early, but obviously he didn't really flourish in that first sort of 6 to 8 rounds. But no, I think he's not a bad shake. How much is he?
He's now 460.
Oh,
so
you can't go there at 460.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing. He was kind of like, because of that risks last week at the 420. But at 420, when you could nearly side swap him from maybe a couple of rookies, maybe it was like 30, 40K on it. Yeah, there was maybe potential there, but still with a break even of 49. I know people are sitting there going, oh, they do have the Tigers coming up, West Coast, Suns, North Melbourne, Hawthorn soon, Carlton soon. Like, they've got a favourable draw. Can he in that role? Now, I think there's going to be a couple of games where he's going to still pop up a 50, but he's definitely showing in that, back pocket, taking the kick-ins. Like you see the odd time with Sinclair might pop down there and take him, but yeah, there's a lot more faith in his kicking, and he's definitely improved his work rate, which you saw in the Giants game. He had the 10 marks, the Swans he had 9 marks, so he's finding the ways to get into the gap by himself, and get those chip kicks over the back line, especially as the Saints switch the ball. So they're definitely looking at him to be the rebounder from outside, in defensive 50. The hard thing is it's such an awkward price.
When's Sicily's Tribunal?
That is a great question, because they've done Butler and they've done Mansell's just thing. So I thought it was tonight too, but am I missing something? Is it not tonight, or is it just later?
So Mansell's suspended.
Because Mansell's just been announced.
Oh, three game
weeks
ban.
he got. Yeah. Which I'm not completely upset about, just because it's not. But if it was a higher profile player, I probably would be more upset. I don't.
And obviously Butler got off as he should have.
So
maybe he's not on tonight.
Unless Sicily's afterwards, but they usually don't go this late.
Yeah. So if Sicily's rubbed out for a few weeks plus the bye, which then if it's a 3 week, it's actually 4 weeks out.
Yeah.
Realistically, so you have to trade, and because he's also 650,000, I think it makes it even more of a trade. I can't believe that Caleb Daniels is the second most expensive defender.
Some people jumped on him a month ago, and it's just
I traded him in draft. I got McRae back.
Yeah.
But still, he's just been on an absolute heater.
So I've got a couple more of these names in this price bracket.
Hit me, sorry.
No, that's fine, mate. 446 is Jeremy Cameron. So he did have a bit of, they didn't announce it, but he definitely was carrying an injury through the middle part of the season, which saw his scores drop, put up some 60s to that. But definitely been moving better. Got an 80 against the Giants, 107 against the Dogs, and that was the first game in a month I saw him, taking those marks back and half back and progressing back up into the forward line as he normally does. So we know he started the season on an absolute heater. They do have, as we said, a tough game this week, Port, and then even Melbourne down at the Cattery after that, before their draw opens up, and they do get those Geelong games. At 446, if people were looking for an F6, would you recommend Jezza?
Oh, I guess they've had their bye, so it's not bad. I'm just trying to... So is it 446?
Yeah, 446.
Oh, that is actually quite cheap.
It is. And that's the thing, definitely against the Tigers, he was, I didn't watch him move outside forward 50 all night, and I was turning to a mate, a friend was there with mine, and she was, I was like, Jezza is not usually like this. He's clearly carrying something, and it sort of leaked out, but there wasn't a huge hoo-ha made of it. But yeah, he was definitely had a couple of weeks there where he was struggling, and that was the slight dip in form. But yeah, he was moving fine against the Bulldogs, and now with the extra week off, I think he'll be freshened up, and we saw how he started the season.
Break even of 72, so it's not really dire. But the thing in his favour, though, he does have a high ceiling.
He does.
13% owned. That means he's definitely high owned on that sense. But Port and Melbourne, probably harder matchups to come. Sydney, I think their defensive is a little bit more vulnerable to a mobile forward. And then North after that. So he could get on a smidge.
And even the Bombers is down in Geelong. which would be foreign for them.
They have a lot of games in Geelong coming
They
up. 1,
do.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games remaining.
Well, and it's more coming up like in the near, like after the Swans game, they play
3 out of 4.
4 out of 5 down there actually. With just the Brisbane game as the only.
No,
So
SCG. 1, 2. Oh, you're talking about
yeah,
after that.
yeah, after the
No, your
Swans
maths
game,
is
it's
wrong,
4
mate.
out of 5. We know
1,
what.
2. Oh, okay. 4
Yeah,
out of 5 in that
yeah,
middle part. Okay,
yeah.
right.
So it's not the easiest run for the Cats, but we know they're going to be in every game.
Yeah, if you're desperate at 446, look, I don't mind it,
I
but I mean, you
prefer-
could also.
For me, I'm going to be
Zorko,
waiting for.
same price.
Yeah, well, I'm going to
Zorko,
be
same
waiting for
price.
Darcy Cameron the week after. But yeah, you're right. Zorko's the same price.
If
But
you're like a flog in your team.
I think the difference is with Zorko, like he hasn't been putting up the scores compared to like we know Jez is still in his prime. He can go massive on any given week.
And Zorko's injury prone. However, they
that's
do
it.
play after you get through Sydney and Saints. They got Richmond, West Coast, a couple of easier ones in that point, and they play a lot of games at the Gabba as well. So look, I'm just trying to throw my man out there, even though he is very floggish at the moment. Is if you're looking for a cheapy option, yeah, man. Otherwise, like Angus Brayshaw's been chipping away under the radar. He's 448k in defense. Will Day had a good 109, so is he on the way back at 444k?
That's
There
why I
is
ended up holding
some
him
value.
in the end. The only other one that I could recommend in that price is at 486 is Brad Crouch. Now, I'm not a normally big Brad Crouch fan. He's more of a fantasy player, but I nearly feel like he's number one midfielder. Like Steele, for whatever reason, is just struggling big time. I don't know if it's been a slight change in there or what's going on, but clearly Crouch is the ball magnet. But the problem is he does have the tendency to he handballs more a lot of the time than what he kicks. You are reliant on the fact that you're hoping for good ball disposal. He does tackle, which is a one good thing, and he has been putting up some good scores. You know, he has had a couple of those 70s, which he does drop naturally sometimes, but he's got the the ability to go 110. Personally, I don't like it, but if you are really struggling for cash and you needed a midfielder, I guess you could do worse.
I think you might as well just go Harry Himmelberg. He's a defender.
I think so. I think
he's
for
a defender
sure you
forward.
would go. Yeah, that's where I think it's still. But this is
You
the
just
problem.
have to.
Himmelberg's got the bye next week.
Who cares? He'll average you 10 points more than any of those other players I reckoned maybe listed.
Yeah,
outside
but
of a
does it
midfielder.
matter if you're playing 17 next week? You're actually
It balances out. If he averages 10 points more per game, it averages.
But then you're still reliant on Himmelberg playing defense every week.
Yeah. Well, I think they need to keep him in contract.
Do, potentially.
And they've said they've experimented and now they're putting him back.
But at the same time, we know if the game's on the line, they'll swing him forward.
Nah.
I still think Himmelberg's a solid choice, but I can understand where people are looking for. Now, there's not much in that round 12, 13 options. We said that's like literally the best options you're getting at that price.
Here's as simple as it is.
Questions about people asking me going, I don't have much cash. I need someone in this price range. What can I do?
Here's as simple as it is. You go Darcy Cameron next week in the forward line. Forward ruck, done. There's your coverage there. You've got the week after that, after Himmelberg's got his bye, keep him there. So just if you have a Humphrey, play your Humphrey for one more week, and then that will fill the void. Himmelberg, bang, into your side. Any other void or any other cash you have, just sit tight, right? Or go aggressive if you still have rookies on field, then at that point you need to have it filled, right? Now after that, Walsh should be under about 500 flat or sub. So there's value. There's value in the midfield if you're looking at some value there. Mills back in a couple of weeks. So a couple more weeks after that. So I'm saying instead of trying to sideways trade and trying to get the best option, you're almost better off holding some of the guys you've got, right? Letting some of these rookies mature over the bye period. So your forwards and the rest of it, just let them mature for a little bit more. Your Briggs, just let them mature for a little bit more and then bring in a Mills for 400K.
I get that. But what happens if you're sitting there like going, okay, I don't have a full team?
Yeah, so Darcy Cameron, Himmelberg.
Yeah, but Himmelberg's got the bye next week.
Yeah, 5. Forget 5 now. 5 will cover you instead.
See, 5's fine. But I'm even looking now, after trades, I'll be right. But potentially some people are like sitting there going, well, they've got 14 players at the moment and looking to bring in 3 full players. It's all well and good.
Tell them they're shit at planning.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Plan better next year.
If you haven't planned, But so people are now looking at options going, oh God, I need to try to find an option. So I'm just saying there is potential options for you who could go well. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I personally am not going there.
I
Like
just feel like
Jez,
you'll get them and then there'll be heartache
of
down the
course.
line
But
anyway.
yeah, that's right.
So you might as well just go, hey, let's just get a better player and maybe cop one donut and get Fife because he's cheap at the moment. He'll cover you for the buy. So there's one less rookie you're having to play at rookie price anyway. And then, yeah, Darcy Cameron in next week, Fife in this week. That's 2 more you're already going to have. Get Marek in, then that's 3 more you're going to have already that you didn't have next week. And then Darcy Cameron and then Himmelberg. That should pretty much cover your team because you should only have 2 or 3 spots left anyway. Otherwise, you can just probably loophole Fife and Humphrey or whoever else onto that bench spot until you can, Walsh in, Mills are probably the 2 big ones that I'm targeting. Darcy Cameron, Himmelberg, Walsh, and Mills. And that's the game.
Yeah. The only issue with like Mills is how long until he gets back in.
That's the problem. Fife to Mills probably straight side swap. It could be.
Actually could
400
could
flat.
Work out that way.
Could very well
definitely
be.
Work out that way.
He will take patience though. So if you're going into a Supercoach finals, Mills could be an easy get to go from like a forward or someone or a Fife and a forward or whoever. Forward's probably gone for me anyway, probably next week. But, there is some options there to have someone who's a little bit late to mature, like a Filippo, hopefully gets an 80. Wardlaw. Yeah, yes. So Wardlaw, those kind of guys. And Fife, you just let them mature for a little bit and then you might be able to go one up, one down if you have the trades to get your loophole players in effect. And that's where Himmelberg, I think, also comes in. It depends.
Those
if you
people
have the time.
A trade going into Supercoach finals and have Wardlaw, it's going to be absolute laughing because Mills is going to be that will be a side swap.
So if you've got buy coverage next week, then bring in Himmelberg. So if you've got the numbers right for next week, then that way Himmelberg's there. I'm looking at bringing in Himmelberg in 2 weeks' time and just holding Humphrey for that extra buy.
All right. I'm going to run through some premium players with you, mate. And let's see if we... And these are, for me, all round 12, 13, because I'm not bringing in a guy that's got obviously a buy this week. And
it makes no sense.
So the simple one, and I don't think you even need to comment on this, and this is my situation. If you don't have Tom Stewart, you're bringing in Tom Stewart.
Facts. Tom Stewart, I would put equally with Neil as must-have players.
Yeah. And I'd actually probably have him ahead just because Neil's obviously a midfielder, whereas Stewart's a defender, with Sicily out as well. And Stewart...
if Sicily's out, Stewart, what's the price?
Stewart's break-even 79. Price at 5. Stewart can be priced whatever. Does not really
No, I know that. I meant how much cash can you bank from Sicily to him? That was the thought process.
Is that 60K? I think it's about 60K.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So that's at least money you could put elsewhere. Because we all know Sicily was overinflated for his price anyway. So, like that works out well. So if you have Sicily, then Stewart, and you don't have Stewart, that's the easiest decision you'll ever make.
Yeah, that's right. Just lock that one in, which is really handy for us non-Stewart owners. Okay, so the Ruck, I think most people are fairly comfortable with the Rucks, but if we were talking about before about the Briggs, if you had, say, Gawn, would you consider going out and getting, say, Jared Witts?
So if you don't have Briggs, you mean?
Yeah. If you're one of the people that can get Briggs.
It's like $100,000 though.
Yeah, it is.
That's the issue for me. And he's probably going to, so I don't think Witts is worth 2 trades on top of Gawn. Because if Gawn gets injured, Gawn will chip away anyway. I don't think the 2, because that's what's going to cost, 2 trades.
If you had the cash and it was 1 trade.
Yeah, but then if you have the cash, then the next person you're going to upgrade is going to require that 2 trades anyway. So it just because you have the cash to make that one in 1 trade doesn't mean that you're not going to then get compounded into 2 trades into it next trade. I think if you've got Maxi, I think you're better off just either you trade him for another position and play Briggs if you've got him, or you just hold him because. Best case scenario, round 18, he gets forward status and you go, cool. Well, then maybe you try and upgrade someone who, maybe Darcy Cameron's not cutting it. Use your trade then and the cash that you do have or the trades that you would have saved and then do that trade.
Yeah, for sure. And we both agreeing with what we said with Stewart about Lockie Neal. I think it's Stewart 1, Lockie Neal 2. That's not a drama.
And he didn't have a good week, so he got some attention, but... Right, wasn't great, but Sydney, I think, leak a little bit of points to their midfield as well. I mean, he scored, 187 against them last year as well, playing at the Gabba. So here's the good thing about Brisbane, though. They play so many more games at the Gabba. So it's so Gabba, this one Marvel, then Gabba, MCG, Gabba, away, Gabba, away, Gabba. So
Hmm.
this is probably the period where they play, what is it, 4 out of the next 6 at the Gabba.
Yeah.
So, and they come into a bit of a bunny run. So we know Sydney and Saints, good teams, but they can leak some points, through the midfield or through some of the offense. Richmond and West Coast can definitely also lose some points through that midfield there. Melbourne, Geelong a little bit harder. Gold Coast usually gets up for those rivalry rounds. Freo will probably be the harder one going across to that point as well. Adelaide, I guess they put some pressure on him last time, didn't they?
The thing, it's no different to like the Crows.
Yep.
And Geelong, home ground advantage. I feel like the gap between teams' best and worst at home versus away has really increased this year. Their teams are like, some teams are looking unbeatable at home, and Brisbane's one. Their away form has got a bit sketchy. Geelong, away from Geelong, they're beatable at the moment, but down at Geelong, I think they're going to, like, it doesn't matter who you send down there, they're going to probably win. Adelaide look really good on their home deck. So that I feel like, Neil at home, you might get some attention, but it just probably means Dunkley's going off that week. At some point, somebody's going to put some attention into Dunkley because you can't just let him roam around and doing what he's doing. And the moment that happens, Lachie Neal's going to be like, oh, hang on, I'm not getting tagged here. I'll just throw it the 150, 160 this week, as we all know he can do. So, I think he's just a must-have. Like, you're going to get punished if you don't have him.
No, I definitely agree. The other thing to note is, well, I was just trying to find the stats, but I think it's somewhere else. The other thing to note, I think he definitely averages an absolute heap more. So I think it's one of the biggest differentials between wins and losses in his average.
Does.
So if they lose, his average was like 102 to 105 maybe last year. And when they win, his average was more like 130.
Yeah, I think it
huge. And same as the Gabba.
Yeah.
Like there's his average at the Gabba is higher than his average away from the Gabba, but wins is the biggest determinant for him as far as Supercoach average.
Exactly.
So when they went on a run of, was it 8 wins or whatever in a row to come up against their bunny side, well, it's like, well, no wonder that Neil's average for that period was actually quite substantial. And then when you look at when they lose, then, he got a 95 against Port Adelaide. They lost. They beat Melbourne, so we got 100 flat. They lost to the Bulldogs, but he did pretty well. Collingwood, they won. North, they flogged 176. But you get on a run. He has the odd stinker. Like Carlton had a bit of a stinker there. But again, outside of that, there's a lot of 110, 120 scores, which is pretty much what you're after. And you can know most weeks he also has that big ceiling game in him, the 176s or whatever, where he'll just get off tap. Yep. So for me, I think with the run of Sydney, Saints, Richmond, and West Coast, I think this is probably the time to bring him in. I thought it was last week. But I guess we'll take the 102 and move on and digress.
He didn't play well, and he's still got a 102. Like, you'll take that.
And he's still like $100,000 cheaper than you could have got him at the start of the year. So 91,000 cheaper. Just move it. Do it and moving on. Now, can we compare him maybe against Sarong and Brayshaw?
I was going to say the next two groups. So we'll take the 2 Fremantle players and the 2 Gold Coast players.
Yep.
We'll start with the Fremantle midfield, Sarong and Brayshaw. So I brought in Brayshaw last week. It wasn't just like 107. I wasn't completely disappointed. Like, they lost. So naturally, his score is going to be less than what it would be in a win there. He's probably going, 120, 125. It's just the way it works. So he's finding plenty of the ball. I think Sarong's definitely the number one guy. But I think that there's not that huge of a gap between both of them. Like we've said in the past that he probably does flat track bully a little bit more than what Sarong does. And he does have some games that he can flat track bully on the way home. But I think Brayshaw is pretty solid for 30 touches, 4 tackles. If he can get some scoreboard impact, that's going to naturally change his score in a very positive way. Can he go like 110 on the run home? Of course. I'm confident enough that that's Brayshaw. It's just more Sarong. I don't know if he could have kept up 114, 115 he was going. I thought he'd slide back to maybe a 110. So I could see both Fremantle boys being pretty similar. There was
Sarong's been so damaging, though. And the issue has been his lingering foot issue, which is kind of
a little bit of the issue, and that's why I didn't end up jumping on him.
Handcapped him a little bit, or handcuffed him a little bit. Handicapped
2 weeks, 93, 108, where he was pumping out like slightly more, because and just those stats have dropped back where, yeah, he was definitely looking at like getting 34, 35 touches. Hasn't come back a lot, but 26, 31, 28. Yeah, it might only be 4 or 5 touches a game. But that's the
Yeah.
difference between going 115, 120 to now going, 110, yeah.
He's my next week watch.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is because I think Neil, you kind of have to jump on
Yeah.
with their draw and that sort of stuff now, and they've already had their bye, so obviously it has a Sarong. But Sarong has a break even of 148, 148.
148,
Which means
yeah.
you can at least watch him. They play GWS, they go to Sydney. So traveling gives you another week starter, or essentially 2 week starter, including training, to see how his foot's going. Is he rebounding? He seems to be just on some light duties, but still playing. But after that, they play Essendon at home, so I think he could be in for a good shake there. They don't have like, say, the easiest run. I mean, you have Essendon, Dogs, Carlton, Collingwood, Sydney, Geelong. But for Supercoach finals, like 21, 22, so they're playing literally, they have 3 out of the last 4 games at home. Brisbane, West Coast. So West Coast round 22, which is probably going to be one of your eliminations finals. I think he'll just absolutely spank up literally West Coast in that point. Brisbane traveling are probably horrible in general anyway, so I think he'll just get business done. Port Adelaide as well at Optus, and then Hawthorn to finish around 24. That's a strong finish to the year, which is why I think if you let him go 148, maybe just goes a flat 100, or maybe even has a bad game this week, hopefully, and then pick him up if he goes to 580, 575, like bang, next week, I'm looking at Sarong. And at next week, he's probably cheaper than Brayshaw. He's already averaging 10 points more per game than Brayshaw. So for me, it's Neil this week, Sarong next week.
Yeah, that's why I jumped Neil last week and Brayshaw, because I had the money to do both, because I could wait on Sarong. But he's definitely
so where are you at?
On the watch.
Where are you at with chopping rookies early? If you're going for overall,
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount. Unless they've got the bye this week. So if it's like, your Weddles, those guys, fine. I'd chop away. But who are you really chopping outside of that? Who doesn't have the bye yet? Like the North Melbourne players, even if you're looking at moving, say, Eddie Ford, or you didn't move Sheasel last week and you've still got him, you just hold for another week. And that'd be perfect. Like if you've got Sheasel sitting there, if he's bye next week, you could get another look at Sarong and potentially do something there with moving a player maybe back or forward, depending on where you have Sheasel, and bringing in like a Sarong, and it might only be like 100K difference.
Yep. So having more players, if you already have enough players this week, buys is slightly different.
Yeah.
Because if you've already got enough players, then you might as well just play one of these other guys, and you're not going to have much of a difference anyway. And you just hope one of your rookies stands up. Like, Johnson, Wardlaw, Fife, one of these rookies stands up and has a score that counts. That's what you're kind of looking for the buys by having more spread. But generally speaking, once you get outside these buys, there's no love lost. If they're not quite ready to cut and you think they'll be ready in a week or two, but you can get the premium you want now, that's when you just have to be brutal. Because you being able to afford a premium that you want is going to get you more points for that 2 week period, and to be held with the 20 or 30K that they might have generated you if you held them. Money doesn't matter at that point. You need points on field if you're going for overall. And especially once the buy's finished, because I think this year we're upgrading a little later than usual based on the fact that we've had some issues, some injury, some rookies that haven't developed. We have a longer season. Some people got a little bit scared, I guess, with all the anarchy, the injuries, and all the rest of it. So I think some people are still going into this buy where they'd probably like to have a full team, but because of all of the other players missing next week, I think there's still going to be a few people holding on to 1 or 2 spots maybe by the end of the buys, which means that it's even more important when you come straight out of those buys, you literally need to go bang, bang, and you need to upgrade. Regardless of if your rookie's ready or not, if you got the cash to go premium and make an upgrade, then basically round 16, you should be making whatever moves you need to go full premium at the latest.
Yeah.
Just bang, bang.
All right. So the two Suns boys. So you got Matty Rowell, 595, and Noah Anderson, 555 or 557.
Anderson, number 1.
Well, let's start with Rowley first. The Rowley's break even's 86. Even at 595, he's got a really good break even. I think he's probably a bit more expensive, and like he's 3 and 5 round average is awesome. But
what gave that away? Was it the 45K extra on his price tag?
Yeah, that's the problem. I know those who brought him in at the right time and have been. I think
Oh,
Chris was one of the ones that jumped on him.
got him at like 450, didn't he?
Yeah, something like that.
150K ago.
Just
Oh,
ridiculous. Um,
bless him.
yeah. So the thing with both of these is Tukes only started light running, so it looks like he's 6 weeks still away. So you're going to get still a good period there without their number one midfield, and Tuke's going to come back, and he's still going to be like how well Tuke being Tuke, he's probably just going to get straight into it and dominate, but missing so much of the season with that knee injury, you've at least got some confidence with these Suns players.
He was aiming for around round 19, I think. So
Yeah,
if he's only
so
just
19,
started,
20.
then maybe it's round 20 now. But either way, they've still got about 5 or 6 weeks left in them.
Weeks
So
where
there's
you
plenty of
know
room.
these two are the number 1 and 2. Rao's scores have been boosted because of that 165 and 159. I think if they were the same price, I would have been getting on Rao. But even though Anderson's had a couple of down weeks, like he still has the ability to pump out massive scores, and we saw that when he went the 144, 189. People then paid probably overs for him, and we did know there was going to be a drop off at some point. Didn't think it was like going to be as bad, but they got the 120 again against the Crows, 557. If you had to make the decision between Sarong this week, if you had to go someone, or going that where you don't know about the foot injury versus jumping on a Rao or Anderson this week, what would you think, Ben?
Oh, that's harder. No, Rao's out of the picture.
Yeah,
Plain
okay.
and simple.
So let's go
mainly
Anderson.
because he will be the one most impacted by Tuke, and Anderson can at least get it inside, outside.
Too. Yeah.
And the fact that he's cheaper. So for me, Anderson, he already has the variance. So that's what you look at these good players. The ones that have high ceiling, all he needs to do is just improve his floor a little bit to then buff that up. And we know last year he averaged 110 on the run home. So he also has history. And he has less injury history there as well over Rao, which makes him even more appealing. Whereas if Tuke comes back in, Rao might just get pigeonholed back into his old role. So that's the big consideration for me. Anderson at his price, he's had a couple of the lower games, which he will dip in there occasionally. But you look at some of his high ceiling games, I mean, 134, 144, 189, 120. So there is some high scores in there.
Like he's two of his lowest scorers games against the Lions, which you guys did a number on. And even though they beat Geelong, it was still Geelong, where they actually had their players in. The rest of the players played really well and dominated that early in the year. And Tuke was still in at that stage. And they do actually have a really nice draw. So they've still got to play the Blues twice, who are in no man's land at the moment.
Hawks,
North Melbourne last round in grand final week, and even the Giants as well. So they've got some teams there. Also the Swans, who aren't travelling well, and they always beat Sydney in their CG. So they've, outside of the sort of Mill, Collingwood, Port, and the Lions, their drill is not too bad. Like it's probably as good as it gets on the run home compared to quite a few of the others.
But he also scored 189 against the D.
So he's got the ability to do it against good teams.
Huge. Yeah. So my thing with him is that if money's an issue, I would rather, because if I'm paying 600K on Sarong, it's really hard. Because number one, it makes it hard for me to get Clary next week. So it's either Sarong or Clary. Would I rather pay 50K more for Clary over Sarong? Well, yes, I would. Although maybe it'll be 70K next week, depending on Sarong's price drop. So that's another consideration for next week. I like Noah because he's probably priced to go. And because of his price point, getting a player at about 550K, who I think will probably average 110 for the rest of the year, I'm okay with. And he's 9% owned, Rao's 8% owned. So they're quite similar as far as that percentage. I just think some will want to be getting off Rao, whereas Anderson, I know someone looking at jumping off like, oh, he's going to lose cash. Mate, if you own him already, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like it's like any stock market. You hold the stock, and if you know they have a bad game and it'll drop, you know that they're going to stabilize and come good. I mean, look at Ridley. Ridley dropped down to like 417K, and now he's back up to 507. So you just got to hold the stock, ride the low, and then go, okay, well, what are they going to average me for the rest of the year? Are they going to keep this variance? And is he going to pull out a 150 against Hawks? It's possible. So you just got to sit there and ride the waves, knowing that those lows aren't going to define them and that the highs aren't going to define them either, where people jump in after the high and then get pissed off when you start to get a few lower scores like, oh, but I just got him in after a 170. It's like, well, no shit. He's not going to go 170 every week. which is the same thing with Dawson. We said, hey, I'd love to get Dawson, but after his 2 massive games, I'm not paying $650K for this guy. And now he's down to nearly $550.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just got to ride the market.
Defender this time.
Oof.
Yes.
You've come prepared.
5'11". Now, a lot of people jumped on him last week. He only got the 74. Got hurt.
He got lucky with that 74.
And he did because the late goal, the very late goal of 2 seconds left on the clock. Talk about old seagull Jake Lloyd there.
But why would you bring him in now?
Well, he's still got a break even of 84. He's had his bye, and he's still one of the better defenders. And especially if people are Sicily out and you've already got Stewart, who else are you bringing in? Because I'm thinking most people
Daniel Rich.
Sinclair. Yeah, well, this is it.
Jokes.
A lot of people have Sinclair already. So Luke Ryan's irrelevant now because the way Freo have changed their game. He's pretty well average an 80 player. And we always get worried about his body anyway. So what other potential defender are you looking at?
So Stewart 1, Sinclair 2, but if you have those two, then Lloyd's probably around the third, or
I don't think there's anyone else.
No, Harry Himmelberg for 140K less.
Who's got his buy? Who
has his buy? Anyway. But take that 140K and
this is why we
bring
brought
in
up
5.
Malira as a potential. But I know Lloyd was very popular, so at least
Lloyd's less risk than
a lot of people. It's only actually 11%. I actually thought he'd be owned more. I wonder how many that's actually at the top 1% because I feel like surely that's going to be a lot more ownership. Let's have a look here. Jake Lloyd ownership for top 1%. Jake Lloyd's in 18%. So nearly most of the top 1%. 90% have Stewart. So that's I'm one of that 9% that don't own him. Sinclair's 67%, and then Jake Lloyd's the third most owned premium defender who has already had his buy in the out of the top 1% of players.
There you go. No, I don't mind him. He'll have some good games. He'll have a few variance ones, but he'll probably go around 100, so you can't really complain too much. And because they have that buy, you're better off having him, because that's what we're talking about. So if there's 10 rounds left, hypothetically speaking, right, there's 10 rounds left and he goes 100.
11 this year because of the extra round.
Okay, so 11 rounds left.
So he's got 11 compared to other players having 10.
Okay, so 11 rounds left at 100.
Yep.
Right, so that's 1,100 points. Yep. Right. Now let's just say Himmelberg plays one less round, so that 1,100 divided by
10.
Divided by 10 means he needs to average 110.
10 just to match him.
Just to match him. So that's what we're talking about, that 10 points there. So sometimes we get caught up in who's going to average better, but if you're playing for overall and you're going to cop a donut, that's the difference. So if you get Lloyd in for 510K and he's going to average you 100 and you bring in someone else that's got their buy, anyone. Let's not say Himmelberg's probably not the great idea because he does give you 140K less. But the person that's going to have their buy needs to average you 10 points more per game just to match that 100.
And this is why I didn't bring Keys because people are going, oh, yeah, you missed the 115. But all that happens is my lowest ranked player drops out.
Yep.
And it was I feel like it was Dawson, my next lowest, 95. So I missed 20 points. Big deal. Now I've got an issue because Keys misses this week.
Oh, you missed the 115. You're like, oh no, whatever will I do when he gets 70 taking day costs after his buy?
And as I said, because of the buy's best 18, it's not that. But this week's a different story with, say, Lloyd, because a lot of teams needing to do this trade to get the 18th player. They don't have the spares like we did last week. Last week was most people had, I had players that I couldn't even emergency Wardlord because I had everyone playing. It sucked. There was so many.
I hope they fix the buys next year because that's a mess. 4-2-6-6. It's a mess of a buy period.
It really needs to be 6 first. Get 6 out of the done.
Or just 6-6-6.
Somebody said 5s, and I was just like, it can't be 5. Well, it doesn't need to have 2 anyway. I don't even know what's over 4. It should, just 6-6-6.
That's just weird. 4-2-6-6.
Maybe it's something to do with the Devil's
or 4 per round over 4.
6-6-6.
Just go 4 per round over 4 rounds.
Doesn't work.
That doesn't even work. No, 4-4-5-5. Yeah, maybe.
You can't have 5 because then you've got an odd number playing 1 week.
Oh, yeah, right. So just go 6-6-6.
That's why you don't teach maths.
They play 6-6-6. Yeah, exactly right. It sounds great in theory. You might as well they play the 6-6-6.
It's just natural. It should just happen.
And it goes with the AFL. You have 6-6-6. Do the buys the same way.
But if they're going to stretch it out because this is how the AFL does things, it needs to be 6 in the first week anyway.
Jeez. If they want to, I can't go there. Stretch it out.
I
Anyway,
know.
so right, fair enough. For me, I like Anderson for that fact. Yeah. So for me, I quite like him. It's just, would I take him at 550? If I needed someone this week and I've already got Neil and I've already got like Sinclair and those guys, then I'm probably going Anderson at 550K over the others based on price. Now, if I hadn't got Neil, then I will probably pay up for Neil this week and then hopefully get Sarong at a better price next week. That's probably where I'd lean.
Yeah.
So if I've already got Neil and I need someone this week, Anderson's my guy. And if I haven't got Neil, get him first. If I haven't got Stewart or Sinclair, obviously you need to get them too. And then go and get maybe a Sarong next week is probably or Oliver next week.
Yeah.
And just pay up. Yep.
Yeah.
What else you got for me?
Just a couple of trade out questions. So some people obviously in different situations with how many trades they got and how many luxury trades they can potentially make. So some people are like, no, I've got to hold Zeeble, maybe even hold Sheasel because I'm getting low in trades. Not a problem at all. And hopefully they can see out the season. All good. Other people see, as we were talking about, like the Team English debate. The one that's been really debated this week is Tom Green because of his huge break even, which is at 142, struggling a bit. Like he's about at his starting price here. He's at 530. He's had the last 3 weeks where he's got 95, 89, 77. So clearly it's either, maybe he's getting a little bit tired or maybe there's just something that's changed in that because he's still getting bulk CBAs. So it's not like it's, he's not in the midfield. He was the clear number one CBA player this week for the Giants. So that hasn't changed. But his ability to find the ball, he's only the 26 touches this week. He had the 28 against the Cats. So is this, just Tom Green, does he just need the week off and he's going to be ready to go? Or is it alarm bells and going, maybe this guy isn't ready yet? Maybe we all thought he's the one that's going to jump up and he was doing it for us early. Maybe he needs to be the one that's side swapped. What are your thoughts and how many kind of trades do you think somebody needs to make this luxury trade?
See, it's interesting. Now, Green has 4 out of the last 5 rounds gone under 100. So that's kind of the appeal there. Now, he hadn't really been spoken about much before just because he's been chipping away close enough, 97, 95. Last week was like Richmond and everyone's like, oh, hang on, a little bit of alarm bells, 89. And now he's dropped to 77 and everyone's like, get out of my team.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of chipping along under the radar, knowing that he can pull out a bigger score. So he's got a 134, a 118, 135, 119. So that's where the variance comes in. And that's where the balance probably comes. So the issue is his break even, as you said, 142, right? So projected to be dropping 26K, which will drop him to about 500 flat before his buy. 35% owned. So if you are looking to get off, it's probably not a bad one to jump off on and hope, but he's averaging 105.5. So at that price, I'd rather probably play Green over a Zeeble based on that price. That's the kind of consideration. So if you dump him, then are you better off playing, say, Green over a Zeeble, Green over a Sheasel, Green over a Ridley, those kind of types? I'd probably rather play Green because at least in his role in his midfield, he's probably going to go close to 100 each week with the big games that he has coming. I think his price will probably stabilize though because they do play. I know he didn't do as well earlier against them, but they play Hawks coming up as well. So Freo, Melbourne, then Hawks, and then Adelaide, then Gold Coast. So 2 teams I think he should probably do quite well against as well. So he probably might stabilize.
Chime in quickly there, Benny. Top 1%. So we're talking the top 1,800 players.
Yeah, not me.
He's in nearly 86%.
Yeah, that's the point of difference. If you trade him out and you go from him to another player like an Anderson, like a Sarong type, then that could really help set you up.
Yeah, and that's what we
the point of
about,
difference.
That 10-point variation. Like Anderson, does Green average 10 points more than Anderson on the run home?
Nope.
Probably not. If they average the same, you'll 100 points up from that trade.
Yep. Correct. And that's 100 points is rankings.
Yeah.
So it's a big difference in that. So I don't mind Anderson to him if you have the trades. And I mean, have the trades as in, look at how many people you have left to upgrade, 1 down, 1 up or whatever on those, knowing that 1 down, 1 up's probably not going to get you a Clurry. It's going to get you a $500,000 player if you're lucky. So factor in maybe if you do go Himmelberg, what's your options there? If I go a Green out now to an Anderson, does that allow me to get a Himmelberg after the bye and balance it out that way? And just sort of look at the options. So I don't mind that one. I've looked at maybe doing the same thing with Green and just moving him on. And the reason for me is I have to try and stay competitive, but it's how many trades can you make? So I need to hold. It's either I'm getting rid of Sheasel, probably, or I'm getting rid of Zeeble, or I'm getting rid of Green, or I'm trying to get rid of 2. Yep. But with 9 trades left and 2 upgrades still remaining, I'm like, okay, well, if I get rid of them and I get in a Himmelberg, can that help me now and later?
I think
that's the balancing act.
At least 11, this becomes a no-brainer. And we talk about like some people, oh, it's only 100 points. So I'm 740 or whatever I'm ranked, but I'm 600 points outside the top 10. So if that's 100 points there, make up. And on the weekend, like muck up the captain choice, there's 50 points right there. But it's like that's already. So
I
that's
nearly did the same as you, by the way, with captains. I stuffed up. I had Neil. I wasn't even paying attention. I had Neil VC, and it was like the early game or whatever, or the second game. As you know, I've been a bit scattered. Yeah. And then I looked down and I was like, hang on, why don't I have Neil VC and Dawson C? And I had the straight up C on Bontempelli.
Yeah.
Like no VC,
that
just
worked
straight
out actually
up
better
C.
than what my situation, because I had 2 cracks at it and still couldn't get over 110.
But I was going Neil into Dawson.
Yeah.
100%. Stupid.
That you got lucky.
I got lucky.
Yeah.
One time.
But that's the difference there. Like we're talking about, okay, how do you make up like 600 points, which sounds a lot, but there's 100 points there. So I need to make up 50 points over like each week for 10 weeks to potentially catch up on people in the top 10.
And if they run out of trades and there's 100 points
where the
there,
running out of trades
points.
comes in. So if you're in that situation, no matter where you are, like you could be ranked 10,000, 15,000, whatever. If you've got more double-figure trades right now, these are the aggressive moves you can pull off. Not just necessarily your Himmelberg's keys, your cheaper options, but trading out highly owned players like Green, who might only go 100, 105 on the run home, but you bringing in even somebody who's going to just average the same, but you know he's getting 1 extra week of 100.
You know what's funny? Our community team, which has been going more for league-based, hasn't done well. I think we've got some killer people in the community leagues, by the way, because I'm getting spanked.
Oh, I was actually going to talk about that in a second.
Getting spanked. It's like as in, I was like, oh, I'll just play the long game and I'll come and kick some ass in the finals, which we could because we've got 14 trades left. And we've got a pretty good bloody side that we can start to make some move from. We're still ranked 7,000th.
Yeah, I was gonna say that because I think it's our Are You Insider group.
Yeah. Are You Insider is one of our groups, but we've got an actual community team as well, which you just kind of make first choices. But I was just going to say our group. So shout out to Stephen holding up the. So he's got an overall rank of 39 at the moment, and then we got Nath as well.
Nath
in our chat group, 70th.
Yeah, he's 70th in it. But he actually didn't shout out to our group, but shout out to him.
Bastard.
Then, I actually don't think Chris is actually in our group either.
Really?
I was trying to scroll down and couldn't find him. Like
it's Nathan, right? Nath,
Nath's flying. So so there's just a couple of people in the group there. We've got what's that? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys who are in our. So that's Stephen, Adrian, Andy, Rehab, Brady, and Adam, who are all in the top 100 at the moment. So good work for you guys as well. And then even I know we've got a couple of insider leagues sitting there. So I think at the
we had one very highly ranked.
Shout out to Keith, but I'm actually on top of it. So I'll do a bit of a head wobble there. But yeah, I was going to actually, it was Mark that I was meant to be shouting out because he's second. He's been flying in this league as well. So we do have some good performers out there in the community. So great work, and hopefully you guys can keep it up. It'd be awesome to have 10, 15 people make the top 100 this year.
Yeah, let us know if you're ranking well too, because I've been liking a couple just on Twitter even, and I think it's great. If you're having a good year, there's nothing better than everything coming together. You're feeling the fruits of your trades. I mean, we've generally done quite well. I know you and Chris are doing better than I am this year. I'm ranked. That's why I keep trading. I had to trade Clary 4,500, and I said early on, made such bad choices that I was like, I'm not going to do well. Whereas last year, it was very much an enjoyable process. So it is a good feeling, and we like to reward it and shout out and
I like
celebrate people doing well.
The rivalries, because you can actually follow people's teams. So I know like Jennifer watches here and the Centre Bounce Boys and her team Hot Pies. So yeah, I've got her on there. I've got quite a few other people that, it's easy now. Like you just flick over to the tab to Rivals and you can actually click on their teams and see how they're going. And so yeah, definitely continue to message us and let us know how you're going out there. So then hopefully this buy period will, you can maybe make a jump, especially these are the 2 weeks where the big jumps are going to happen. We're going to see some massive changes in rankings.
Oh, for sure. Especially next week. Anyone that has close to 18, I think is going to go up heaps in ranks because I've seen a lot of teams scraping the barrel, like starting to have a look at their teams, and it's very, 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 very dire and grim. So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, shout out. So you get the community league though is one. I think we just have to try and push for overall now because I thought we'll go the long game for once and just make a few changes. Like held Josh Kelly for his injury early on in the year, hold Ridley for his KO, so it's like short term stuff. And we're getting spanked, getting like 13th, 14th out of 18. And I'm like, oh, great. So I've got to try and make some moves to try and make the finals in those leagues. So shout out to you for kicking our ass if that's you, if you are in that league. So now we're at 7,000th overall and somehow getting spanked every week. So we'll just go for overall with the 14 trades instead, I think.
What are you liking for your VCCs this week, mate?
Oh, that's a good question. Make sure I don't stuff it up this week. It's probably the best way to go. Let me have a look at my team. Interesting. So I think there are some clear cuts now.
If you're one of the very few people that seem to own Butters out there, Thursday night, there's your Thursday night VC.
But if they get 5 people back, I don't know if I like that.
I still think
especially with like Dogs against North, I think you could go Bontempelli easy as a C option. I don't mind.
Your boys, Friday night's the obvious VCs, I think. Either Neil or
Dunkley and Neil, I think, is definitely a good shake for that one. I'd rather leave. See, Port Adelaide, one of them's getting off the hook.
Yeah, that's the thing.
You don't know quite which one.
To get off the hook.
Yeah, but Rosie could go 150. He has
100%.
multiple times. Horn Francis throws the occasional 130, 140 out there. Geelong might just show up in a must win, and if Geelong win, then all of a sudden Port Adelaide's pie just gets reduced.
Yeah,
generally speaking. So look, I think Brisbane at the Gabba, they're $1.23 favourites. So I think Neil. After what Neil did to them last year, I don't mind Neil as a VC. Dunkley's based on his late form, so he's on a heater. I can understand that one as well. But for me, I'm probably going Neil into Bontempelli.
I think the obvious one is the captain.
Easy captain.
Otherwise, it's become nearly the most safest players. But Tim Taranto against St Kilda, outside, what's he got? 1 score under 100 in the last 10 weeks. I think it is.
He's been flying 136 on the weekend.
Ever since they actually gave it to him on FC, going, and Corns was trying to take credit for it, going, oh yeah, I pointed out his flaws and he's become a better player. Like, yeah, shut up, Kane.
So Taranto's been really consistent, but 4 scores over 130. So it's 4 of his 13 have been captain worthy. So that's my only consideration. Whereas at least some of these other guys with a high ceiling.
But that's actually 4 in the last 8. So once he's sort of got a feel of where he fits into the team, like that's every 50% of games there in the last 8 is going over 136. Like that's huge.
50% maybe captain. I guess as a VC, it's not bad.
I think he might be a more VC. Like everyone's going to want the Brisbane players. But because you've got the option this week, Taranto into Bont's not a bad shout either.
Yeah, Neil's more likely to probably go. He could go 140 plus, but then, so you are right. Neil's probably more likely to get you a teaser.
I don't want to miss either Neil or Dunkley.
Yeah, Neil's more likely to go 120, whereas Taranto will go 115 or 135.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling like it's going to happen. Like Neil and Dunkley are going to put up 120 this week, and Taranto's probably going like 135 or just.
Okay, so that's why I don't mind Butters. If you go for a really left field VC or someone like that, then they're going big or they're not going big. Like Dunkley, he's going big or not, generally speaking. You're going to take his VC or you're not going to take it. Same as that. I don't even mind like if you have a Sarong or someone or rather like that as well, someone who might just go absolutely big. You're looking for 140 plus. That's pretty much the area you're looking at. So Marshall maybe could go big. The other consideration, there is enough time between Carlton and Suns, so any one of those as well. You might even try and roll an Anderson or or roll one of those other players and try and roll a VC. But generally, Bont, in order to not take a captain this week, it's not a 120 flat this week with Bont against North, in my opinion. You need 130 plus this week to avoid the temptation.
Yep. Apparently, it's just been on Twitter. It's actually Maguire's son, Xander, saying Jack Steele's actually been playing through a flared-up knee injury and should get up, but not necessarily might get up against the Tigers this week. But yeah, so that probably explains why Crouch has actually been the one.
I need to just,
well.
Green and Steele. I looked at my side. I was like, man, Green and Steele are stinking up a shitstorm.
And Sicily's Tribunal is actually on at the moment.
Oh, okay. Right. So why don't I have that up?
Yeah, I'm actually getting reports from Nathan and Emily on this.
You're meant to be the man in the know. Is our man, is it Dave Zeta? Is he putting it out there?
No, I've been actually getting, Nathan's been the one doing the updates for me.
No, Dave Zeta. He's where it's at. I think James Sicily has had enough. He's scaling more than usual. Oh, he can't be happy.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. And I posted this as well. I don't think it's suspension.
Blaming Brockman.
Yeah, for increasing the rotation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I know it looks pretty bad in some aspects, but I mean, I guess he dived and tried to bring him on top of himself. And how is he meant to know? And I go for Brisbane.
This is the thing.
I don't even own Sicily, so it's not biased.
The hard thing, because some people are saying the Mansell thing might not even be worse, but because it's Mansell, who cares? Because it's a Sicily and he's so highly owned in Supercoach, everybody cares. They're like, maybe Sicily's actually is worse technically, but where everybody wants to see him only get like one at worst because we want to all hold him in the team. This is where it gets really hard with tribunals because we get all biased on, a whole lot of factors.
Oh my God, AFL is saying that he could have chosen not to tackle.
Yeah, but this is the problem as well.
He's like, I guess he kind of dived towards him. He's like, he's also captain, so it's poor leadership if he doesn't try and tackle someone. So he's about to get rid of the ball, so his only choice is to tackle him by like launching himself at him.
Yeah,
Sicily says McCluggage would have fallen onto him if there wasn't any influence from Brockman. So basically saying he grabbed him and turned him towards himself, and the fact that Brockman hit him meant he didn't actually land on Sicily, but pretty much over-rotated and hit his head. I don't know. Like, as in, I go for Brisbane. I saw it. I don't own Sicily in my team, and I think that I know he's probably going to get rubbed out, but I feel like he shouldn't. I don't know. I'm hating the lack of consistency.
This is the problem. Like, this could be 0. This could be 4. Like,
it's stupid though, and I blame Christensen literally because who's his boss at this current point?
Well, that's the problem. I don't blame Christensen. I blame
Scott for leaving and coaching Essendon.
I blame McLaughlin because how you not put somebody in place in this situation?
They put interviews out for Brad Scott's position.
Yeah,
they put it out last November.
Mm-hmm.
And they still haven't filled his position. Right. And now we've got this absolute debacle where Christensen's doing what he feels is right, pretty much as a one-man dictator.
Yep.
And then as in all the interest of the game. So you got admin interpreting, and I joked as well, saying he's probably got these quarterly meetings that he probably didn't go to, got the minutes from it, and now he's interpreting it the way he wants to. And no one's around for 3 more months or longer to tell him to pull his head in.
Yep. Exactly.
And I felt that there was one incident where it got overturned. They took it to the courts, overturned. Everyone's like, justice prevailed. And I felt like they've been pushing the barometer and pushing that limit until there's an outcry from the community. And that was weeks ago. And now they're still pushing the agenda past what is acceptable. And now the community is blowing up again.
Yep.
So, mate, if everyone's outraged, maybe hop back into your lane and actually learn something.
And you see this even with the whole, like, we're glad Dan Butler
glad he got off. That was stupid.
How does this even need to go to the tribunal?
You know what they said though? Oh, well, you tackle him and you need to just drop and bring him down this way instead of like.
Because of the intensity of the tackle. And
he was running flat strap.
But somebody going, like, Blakely, no consideration that somebody could come up and tackle him from behind. Yeah. And at what point do players need to consider going, hang on, any player, and this was the thing, like 80s, 90s. Now, we don't want to go and see bloodbaths and players completely, I don't know, I keep saying this as a Supercoach show, but we do turn this into Footy Insider sometimes. But I think it's fair to go, players still need to think that they could be, they didn't expect contact. That's not expecting somebody to come and hit you high. That's legitimately somebody could come and tackle me.
Yep.
And you.
Well, you can't go claiming whiplash because someone tackled you from behind. You can get tackled from any angle.
Any angle.
At any time.
And he was like, he had plenty of time to get rid of that ball. And I saw it like George Warlord's first game. Now he'll learn it, first game player, the speed of AFL compared to say VFL and under 18s. But he kept trying to take the ball on, which North Melbourne fans would be awesome. They're taking the game on, trying to take the player on, thinking he was Chris Judd already. And it's like, no, okay, you're an 18-year-old. But the understanding that you do not get that much time as an AFL player. You're not all, like Scott Pendlebury does it best. He always finds pockets and seems to slow down the game and that. But that's a skill set that he has that very few players have in the game.
He's got a continuum transfunction.
He does. He 100% does. So it's amazing how many of these players do get the ball, and it's just like, oh, I'm not expecting any contact to happen. So yeah,
what's that from? Like, dude, where's my car?
Yes.
Show us the continuum transfunction. You're right. It just makes everything slow down.
Yeah. So yeah, I was glad that the result happened the way it should have, but it should have never got to that point anyway.
Oh, I was teeing off on Twitter, and I don't normally. I think even with the one I blew up about weeks ago, because it's like one thing you can kind of take, another thing you can kind of take, and then it gets to a point I'm like, nah, enough's enough. Like, it's honestly, if it impacts the ability, and they're kind of marketing it to casual players, because a casual player is not going to know every single player, and it's like, oh, Butler's rubbed out for a week. They're not going to know. They rock up to a game. They're not going to go, oh, is Butler playing? They're not going to have any idea. I mean, just look at Collingwood booing bloody Grundy. They have no idea why he left the club. They're going for the casual player.
You know what the funny thing is? Because I was reading a lot of chat forums from the Pies with that. That's another issue in itself. Now, I've got no issue.
What are you doing? Do you have an alias getting in the chat rooms of Pies?
I actually do. Like, it's amazing. So I don't comment on a lot of them because a lot of clubs
infiltrate.
Yeah, that's right. They'll let me add to have a look to know what's going on. Because the player supporters do sometimes get inside knowledge and things like that. And it's interesting to see their chats anyway. So, but Collingwood supporters are going, well, he could have stayed if he was to accept $300,000 or $400,000 less dollars. I'm like, in what way? I'm just sitting there going, I'm fighting back the urge to reply here. I know if that was you, Benny, you would have sent 1,000 tweets back to him. Going,
imagine being told in a job, hey, by the way, here's a contract. We value you to do it this much. This is what we value you at. Now, all of a sudden, hey, by the way, we've got a few more people have come into this company and we actually value you less.
Yep.
That's not good. How are you meant to be intrinsically motivated to show up to work and put in your all if they're telling you they now worth you less?
And I can say I've been through it before. Like my first year of teaching, and as you know, and a lot of people who are teacher friends or are teachers out there, and they still have a lot of contracts. So especially when you first get into it, you can be on a 1-year contract or 3 year, 7. So it's very similar to like the footy system. And it's like managing a salary cap. Each school has a budget depending on how many students they have, so how many teachers they can employ. So first year, get my job. Myself, 7 of us come in, 7 of us on 1-year contracts. We've all got to interview to get our job back. Principal, the school goes, yep, you're the people, no problem. Principal comes in 2 days later to 2 of us, who are the 2 youngest ones. We, instead of offering you your contract right now, we're going to employ you. However, there's another teacher that's won Teacher of the Year that we're trying to fit into the budget. So what we're going to do is hold off on your 2 contracts to get him in now while he is out of contract. And then we're going to move money around end of the year, and then we'll get you to sign. And what naturally happened, myself and somebody else went and did an interview elsewhere and left, because it's like, well, I'm not going to sit around and wait for that moment.
How can you compete with Teacher of the Year?
But we're not going to even wait to see, well, what happens if something changes here? What if there's numbers drop off and all of a sudden my contract's not there?
You've got to secure up your future, which is what they do. They play the market, and you got to, because this is their limited window. Like football aside, that's a limited window to earn peak money.
Exactly.
And you don't know if you're going to do an ACL, you don't know if you're going to get injured or get concussed and impact your future. So whatever money's on offer, you kind of have to take the security with what comes with it. Now mine's funnier than yours, Swizz, and I'll try and not to digress too much, but same sort of thing where I had a company was underpaying me, like legally underpaying me. And I tried to look, I'm like, hey, I think you're underpaying me. And they're like, no, like you're you're hired for out there,
Yeah.
but we're using you in here, so it's a different rate.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Like I was young, so I was like, oh, okay. Like, anyway, so I went and looked it up again. I was like, actually, like based on this and this and this, I'm trying to lay it out. I believe I'm being underpaid. So I know it's not much, but hey, at the time I was like 18. I said that $15 or $150 that you owe me, or $300, whatever it would be. I feel like I've earned it. I feel like I've worked hard for you, and I feel like I have value. And they said, I consider this a formal warning for using work time other than that is described. I was like, you are kidding. I am entitled to look at my pay while I'm at work. So I was like, consider this my 2 weeks resignation. He goes, finish stuff the 2 weeks. You can finish out the week. And I was like, thanks very much. And then at the end of the week, he tried to big boss come over to me and say, oh, like, hey, if you want to come back and work casual, let me know. And I was like, get fucked.
Yeah, exactly.
You make me feel like I'm not valued.
Yep.
If you make me feel like I'm replaceable. When I was doing 2 to 3 jobs for them at once, I was like, get stuffed. And same with these boys here. If you don't feel valued,
that's
why?
what Goodwin said. Is like, it's just about making our players feel valued. And that's like, it wasn't the Collingwood members issue or the Collingwood staff that's in at the moment that offered Grundy that massive contract because they didn't want the risk of him potentially leaving to go back home. But the reality is there was people at Collingwood that valued him at that price. So it's like, you can't be begrudging if, they pretty well, like Chalor, forced them out the door because
there's
they've made bad
though.
decision, management.
People talk about loyalty and stuff. There's a difference between having a mutual conversation. Hey, we really like you. Hey, you look, we, as you can imagine, we have all these players that we're trying to fit in. You know what I mean? Are you happy here? Are you willing to maybe accept less money now in order to stay here and fit in with everyone else? Because otherwise someone's going to get forced out. So that's a different conversation where you're saying, hey, yeah, look, I do like it here. And if you enjoy your workplace, you can accept less money because happiness is worth more than money.
Yeah.
Right? Facts. But if you go and actually offer them money and you sign them saying this is what we value you at, you can't turn around and then try and get them to take less money because then that has the negative effect.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't open up that, oh, hey, by the way, we offered you this. Now we actually want you to give that money back. Like try and talk to someone at a lotto or something, or they go to the pokies and they win. Oh, hey, by the way, you won, but you weren't actually meant to win this much. Can you give some money back to the club? You'll say, get stuffed.
Yeah.
Get stuffed.
And this is the thing that like a lot of the the journos don't talk about. Say for example, Richmond, my club. So your Cotchins and Rewalts and people are like, oh, why haven't they retired and stuff like that. I still think it's a part of it going in those premiership years to keep premiership sides together, and no different to Geelong. Okay, we need you to play for less money now so we can get players in or keep players at this club. However, come the end of your career, we'll keep you on a couple of years. And you see the odd player that gets paid 12 months to pretty well sit at home because it might, and people do say, oh, yeah, but they've earned all this money through their career. But in their peak, maybe Rewalt and Cochin, just using them as an example, no different, say Geelong, say Jeremy Cameron or whoever, Hawkins and that, but more the loyal players who have been there their all career. Yeah, I could accept more money leaving elsewhere. I could accept more money now, but for the good of the club, I'm going to accept less. But the club's going to look after me down the track, which is the case with some of these senior players. So I know when, they go, oh, why isn't this player retired, or this player should move on for a kid? Well, hang on, they've sacrificed their own career and their life earnings. So it's good to see the club, and I've got no issue with that.
If anything, they might just get delisted, brought in as a rookie, but still paying them a certain amount, or they'll be an unofficial advisor, playing VFL, but kind of assistant coaching in the AFL because they still have salary to pay.
Exactly.
And that makes sense because especially if you then go, hey, we're going for success. If we win the premierships or whatever, we go through a rebuild, we're going to have money to spare. So, especially for those kind of players anyway. And I agree. I think Cochin, he is a veteran, but I feel like he doesn't have many tricks outside of the midfield, which is when they're talking about him playing forward. I was like, you've got some dynamic forwards. And I don't think Cochin's one of them. He can't kick it 50 meters that well at goal. So and you need to be able to kind of hit.
He probably retires, maybe even after this week or close, depending on what the conversation, because he gets up his 300 games. But it wouldn't surprise me, even Rewalt, like keeping him on the list next year. Maybe it's a case of broken glass, come in, but maybe it's some sort of role, maybe even that's with coaching role where, and that's how some also clubs are getting around this soft cap situation as well, where, okay, we can't afford more assistants, so let's just keep senior players on the list. and
Yeah.
we can
I
pay
mean,
them
look
on
at like
there.
the Beast McCluggage is still in the VFL, and probably good enough to play maybe some club footy, but playing these like Robinson,
Mm,
stayed on for a bit more
yeah.
and played some VFL, and then when needed, hey, bang, bang, injury. Hey, who's the guy that can actually come in and play on the wing or forward line? Robbo, just
Mm,
like line them up and destruct them
yeah.
and go for that. So I think there is definitely some value there. And I know we have gone off topic. So by the way, if you've stayed around, this is good old footy chat
Yeah.
because there's whiskey involved. Swizz, we haven't seen each other in
We
weeks, mate.
actually haven't. It's been
We haven't even
Chris and I
spoken. I've pretty much
That's
ghosted
right.
you boys mostly for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it, mate.
I
Yeah.
was not like even the thought of recording, or I watched a little bit of footy. I think the Sydney game. I was like, okay, right. I feel feeling a little bit better, right? And I was like, okay, I sit down, Sydney and Saints, like that first quarter, and I'm just like, you are kidding me. Like I've literally G'd myself up for this and having a couple of drinks and horrible.
Wow.
But yeah, it's
I said that. I was like,
busy
feel
periods
free to
in
message
work.
us if you want
And
us to start doing a show, Footy Insider or something, or if you just want
yeah,
to keep us on
you
Supercoach.
boys literally
I could sit there
lose
and
the
talk.
plot.
I could
You
sit there and
lose the
talk.
plot without me. Bloody
You know
the
what the
first
problem
week,
is? Because I
Chris
watch
Fritz, he did his own thing.
Footy
The first week.
Classified, and then I'll listen to like SEN, and I sit there and I think some of the like people on there do a great show. Like I like Dwayne Russell because it's more they get the viewers calling up. And I know a lot of people like tune in because of our opinions and our advice for Supercoach and stuff like that. But at the same time, I get very frustrated because you got people like Corns and that idiot Sam McClure and whatnot. They might put out some good stuff, but there's so much other stuff because of the amount of media out there. They put out clickbait stuff, and maybe they actually like generally believe it, but it just frustrates me. It's going, okay, no, people actually want to hear proper footy chat, not just you guys putting out clickbait stuff. So yeah, it just gets frustrating, and that's why sometimes I sit there and go, well, I'd rather actually just talk some footy with people because
I don't get
it
vent
just
enough either. Like I don't
yeah.
I'm not one to generally post and vent on Twitter.
Mm.
And sometimes I do. And I know I posted poor is it Timmy Mitchell? I put out a little accidental tweet today. I was like, oh, you know me, like you kind of see something innocent and you're kind of like, oh, just kind of post on Tim Mitchell. Sorry, mate. I apologize for my crude remark this morning. Anyway, so I don't like to post much online, and even Facebook or anything. Twitter, I'll put out a few bits and pieces, mainly comedy stuff.
Yep.
Like bloody Hunter absolutely collided with Will Hoskin Elliott. And I was like, oh, hit him like a parked car. And a few, like reminding me of when he did hit the parked car when he was playing with the Bulldogs. But yeah, I don't vent as much in the public sphere outside of this, because here you just talk, and this is where the opinions are actually live and formed as we go. Same as this whole format that we've pretty much just worked through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like the state of the game at the moment with these suspensions and stuff. It makes me less motivated to watch.
And the hard thing is because one of the only data measuring sticks that they have is by people with their feet. So attendances are up, viewership is up. So they're
But casual.
So they're like
casual
the
people
game
are the
is in a
rage.
great state. But the other part of it is too that people forget is population growth. Like, of course, there's going to be more people watching footy just generally on every year because the population grows every year, and branching out to new markets that you go to some games and there's probably more. You might have Chinese and Indian and other immigrants who are picked up the game for the first time. But what you're losing is maybe some of those more entrenched fans, or you've got the fans like the hardcore members, which ourselves as well, that go to a lot of games, who are, no matter what they do, are still going to be there, no matter what, going to be turning up and going. I've had a couple of arguments on Twitter with these people getting to me about crowd numbers, and there's always like they're like, you got 100,000 members, and I get 30,000 this match, and there's 70 at this match, and because even though people are members, some of them are kind of casual members. They might only sign up to go 3-4 games a year. It's no different than people paying a gym membership.
And there's a difference between supporting the club and feeling forced to go to every single game.
Exactly. So yeah, there is a bit of like fans voting your feet, but Collingwood Melbourne, if I wasn't doing something yesterday, I would have probably gone to that match as well. It's going to be a cracking and more because of the the Freeze M&D, which is an awesome thing. The beanies, Neil Danaher, amazing human, should win Australian of the Year. It's and the team behind that. So you're going because of the event and the cause of that, but I'm not necessarily not going to that game just because I've got issues with the Tribunal. I'm going to come and vent on our podcast, or I'm going to come vent on radio, but they don't use that as the measure. They're like, well, people are still rocking up, and as fans, I don't want to not rock up and see my team, or not rock up and support a cause just to prove their to make a stand against. And I think most footy fans are the same. So it's a hard place for us fans to be in, because we obviously are really annoyed with the Tribunal. We're annoyed that we don't get the full 23, 24 rounds footy fixture.
We're annoyed with Geelong putting short, medium, and long-term injuries.
What is that about as well? And then people are like, well, if you're a Geelong supporter, you care. The only people that really care might be us, like your super coaches and stuff like that. But and this is where it's hard. I get it from the club point of view. They only care about the club and their members, and I get that. But at the same time, there is 180,000 super coaches, AFL fantasy and dream team players. Some of them don't cross over, so there might be more. And I only watch other games because I'm a super coach and obviously the podcast. So there is enough casual fans which are following the game because they want to know. We are invested because of the games that we play, and we want information. And when clubs stop doing that, yes, they've got to their shareholders, to their members, that is their first thought. But when other leagues have more transparency around it, I think the AFL should get tougher on that, and even the broadcast rights, and go, if everybody's doing it, then it's not a problem. So if every club had to come and be transparent about their injuries and be open about that, then there's no advantage or disadvantage anyway. So, and it just makes the fans and us fans who are following the game more engaged with what's going on.
The most information he gets from listening to Scott in his press conference after a game. He will actually say, oh, this person's probably a chance next week, and we're looking at bringing these 5 people in, or this one's Guthrie's still a while away, or Guthrie had a setback. Generally, it's from the interviews because they ask him, but not everyone's going there. And I think it's set up in the way for casual viewers, because casual viewers aren't going to know. Before I actually did Supercoach for draft or standard, I had no idea who these fringe players were, except for the big names. So unless, like Sicily, him being out is a big name. People go, oh, Sicily's out. Oh, he's probably being a flog, and they'll just go, cool, we'll see you in 4 weeks. I have a lot of love for West Coast supporters showing up.
Fantastic.
Showing up to home games compared to the Carlton supporters hurling abuse and throwing scarves and
I don't mind
all
that
the rest of it.
Because my theory is, like, you remember, like, maybe don't have to throw things to the players. Okay, so I'm not
or hurl abuse.
But at the same time, everyone's allowed to, I think, support in their own way. I can understand
That's
if
not
you're rocking up
supporting.
each and out, but if you're rocking up each and every week, you're paying your hard-earned money, and you're feeling like there's a lack of effort, like that. What was it? 14 players had 1 tackle or less. Like, if I'm sitting there as a fan and I'm rocking up every year, you expect me to rock up to every game, which you do, and then you see that sort of effort, of course you're going to be emotional.
Number one,
now,
Carlton supporters have been through.
I think as long as you're not being offensive.
One
to
of
the
them
players,
was being offensive on the video.
So those guys are idiots. But I've got no problem people passion, as long as they're not swearing at players, but actually letting them know, because we know they're feeling it and that. But I don't. My mate had this argument with people at a game because he's like, I refuse to clap them off, and then naturally people start arguing with him because they're like, no, you should always clap off your team and that. And everyone feels differently about this. So I think everyone
clapping's different because you're not giving them the additional. Whereas you shouting or yelling, I'm like, well, number one, Carlton fans should be used to the disappointment.
Yeah, well,
no offense. No, well, when they're at the bottom of the ladder. So it's like West Coast have it now. They're supporting them through that process. God knows why, right? But that's the process.
Doing a great
Brisbane
job
as well. You went through a lot of heartache where you kind of go, oh, like that's just what you expect. Like, we look at, like, we might win some games and then we just get flogged, right? But you just have to. And the problem is, Carlton are in a very similar position to what Melbourne were years ago, where they were expected to make the 8 and they're not going to. So what are they going to do from here? Are they going to now rally together to get it all together in the offseason and then possibly win a premiership? Or are they going to sack their coach again every 2-year period? Are they going to be divided? That's going to be the really interesting thing for me. And I feel like they're a 7, but they're telling everyone they're a 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we deserve a
Same.
10 coach.
Yeah.
We have 10 players. You know, they're the ones swiping for only 10s because they're a 10, and I deserve a 10 because I am a 10, and they don't actually understand that they actually are a work in progress. So that's a big thing for me. But hurling abuse, I don't know. Like, I know one of my mates, Stu, shout out if you're listening, he saw Fagan, I think, walking once, and I think they got flogged against the Bulldogs or one of those opening rounds where we didn't do well, and he made some remark to Fagan as he was walking by him in the park. Like, oh, hey. He's like, oh, hey. And he's like, oh, so you guys actually going to man up this week? Or like you're going to, you know, give these boys some accountability or what? Yeah. And he's just like, fuck off, mate. And just walks off. You know, so
but
I think there is a
line to draw. I can
understand
because you're sitting there as a fan going,
but
are you going to put some accountability?
If you're taking it that personally that you feel the need to abuse and get really vocal, then I think that's more on you because.
But there's the difference between abuse and I think there's also I think there's a fine line, but there's yeah. So if you're in that situation with your mate there and he's not being abusive, I can understand Fagan's reaction, but at the same time, like you're sitting there going, okay, I'm venting and no one's listening. Like the club's like, any chance you guys can play man up footy? Like, and I've been through it with Richmond. And you walk out games and you're just like, why? Okay, you want me to rock up next week? Why am I rocking up next week when, you're showing the same thing each and every week?
I nearly walked out from Brisbane once, but the problem was it took me about 45 minutes to get to the game. So I'm like, where am I going?
And I don't walk out like leave early. So I've sat through like 150 point droppings before, and it's hard because you're like everybody else. Like, I've got better things to do. I'm out of here.
Well, you also sat on was it a goal after the siren down the Gold Coast? You saw
it on many goals after the siren.
Yeah, Essendon against Brisbane up here was horrible.
To recount how many goals after the siren I've actually sat through and it's quite a few. And that was the thing in Richmond the last 2 years, like losing close games, the frustration there, like. And I know that I'm sure they're trying it. I'm sure they're trying to do things. But as fans, you're like, okay, I'm rocking up and I'm watching the same thing each and every time. So how do I get to where's my channel to vocalize that? And
hop on Twitter.
Well, that's the thing. It's otherwise you go on Twitter and that and
how good was it? Carlton posted on the Monday saying, hi, the merch store is closed today due to a public holiday. And everyone's just like, oh, so people have to wait a day to return their stuff. Oh, there were so many good comments.
It was awesome.
Shout out JP as well. Literally funny stuff.
Yep.
All right, I think that'll wrap us up, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know if you've liked, was it about a half an hour footy chat?
Yeah.
Don't mind it,
really
mate. Good to see you.
Show, but it's
good to see you.
It's interesting. So hopefully we'll know some news with Sicily going.
Oh, check it now. Forward. Surely they're deliberating. It's probably a long deliberation. This is going to
be like a 3-hour tribunal.
The other thing as well. So Australia is not going into a population decline anytime soon. So memberships will keep going up. Viewers will keep going up because we have a large migration system because Australia is an attractive place to live and work. So education's high, workplace, stability, safety, everything is literally up. So even if I know our natural birth rate, so births over deaths is slowing because we're not multiplying as much like any developed world. But we have such an extensive migration system that we're not going backwards anytime soon.
Of course not.
Which is why we need to accept more multiculturalism and diversity because that's literally where Australia is going. That's where our growth is coming from. So if you're not accepting of other people and their views, then I suggest you probably get used to the fact in the next 20 years you're going to have to make friends and relationships with people from other cultures in order to survive. There's a life lesson. All right, let me go over
No, there's nothing.
Well, you see it. Melbourne particularly has different ones. Like, and there's, up here we got these micro communities where you have different, people living in different regions because they want to live close to their people that have same ideologies, the similarities, relationships, etc., beliefs. So that's why you have these pockets or micro communities of people with similar beliefs.
Shout out to JP as well. His son's birthday. I think he's just become a teenager. He's put out a pretty funny tweet about having dinner with your ex.
Oh, that'd be hard, hey. Having a kid with an ex, especially if you don't get along with them, that couldn't be anything worse. It's like The Hangover, or you wake up and you're like, oh, like, what am I doing here? Except you have to see them all the time because you actually have a person with this person.
It's a big commitment, which I think some people don't take into account before they go through that commitment.
Well, no, you take into account the 2 minutes of
That's right. That's right.
of
I know
other
people in that
things.
situation.
Oh,
Going,
mate.
well, wasn't thinking about that at that 2 minutes.
Or the bad ones where he's like 18 and he's trying to leave her, so I think, well, we assume she got pregnant on purpose to keep him along, which worked for about 4 more years. But anyway,
No.
but that's it from us. The wild, unedited, unscripted
Crazy.
version. Half Supercoach, half Footy Chat. Let us know if you've liked it. It's probably just what you need during this bye rounds. Let me know if you've missed me for the last 2 weeks, because
we have, Benny. We have.
it might help. It might help, ladies and gentlemen. Swizz, thank you for joining us. Hopefully Chris will get here, the menage a trois for next week to navigate through the worst round of footy, the bye rounds of hell. And we'll talk to you soon. Let us know how you're traveling. Let us know what you are thinking, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers and good day.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Bye.